very much to you, Kate, and to everyone involved in getting today off the ground. We've just heard from Dr. Kate Lardner, who is the chair of Voices of Mornington Peninsula, and our very first voice from Sean Wilmore, who's also one of the directors of Voices for the Mornington Peninsula, Voices of Mornington Peninsula, and my thanks to Lionel Ash for that wonderful acknowledgement of country. So thanks everybody for being involved and being here today, a grassroots community-led movement for positive change and representation on the Mornington Peninsula. It is fantastic to see such positive engagement, traction and momentum already. As Kate's mentioned, the launch of Voices for Mornington Peninsula is for everyone interested in politics and the democratic process, but particularly for us here on the Mornington Peninsula, a rapidly changing electorate that has already demonstrated the power of community-led campaigns in the political process. So it is a great honour for me to facilitate VMP's launch into the world as your MC, and also, as Kate mentioned, a very proud Rosebud girl. We have 3 guest speakers and then a Q&A opportunity. So you can post your questions into the Zoom chat, and these will be collated for me, and I'll get to as many as I can. And a reminder that there is a QR code that's coming up onto the screen periodically that you can click onto. I think we're all pretty familiar with the click onto a QR code now. That will actually sign you up for updates on everything to do with the Voices for Mornington Peninsula. So if you're interested in staying in touch, which clearly you are by being here today, then click on that and it will take you straight through to an opportunity to stay up to date. So we do have some great speakers and I really want to get to them. Dr. John Hewson AM is a former leader of the federal opposition and has become something of a lightning rod for the small L Liberal heartland and something of a thorn in the side for the current iteration of the Liberal National Party. Cathy McGowan, OAM, elected to federal parliament on the orange wave of independence through northeast Victoria with the Voices of Indi in 2013, and Louise Page is a veteran of local community-led campaigns, a founding president of Save Western Port that fought AGL and won. Our first speaker, though, is Dr. John Hewson. He's enjoyed several careers in academia, business, politics and the media. He's worked for the Australian Treasury, the IMF, the Reserve Bank, the UN, was a founder of the Macquarie Bank and also chair of ABN AMRO. He's currently Professor Hewson at the Crawford School of Public Policy at ANU. And John has some particular views and perspectives and insights into independence and the two-party political models. So Dr. Hewson, thank you for joining us. And you have the floor.
Well, thank you very much, Tracey. It's a significant pleasure to be here and to be here with my old friend Cathy McGowan, who will show you what you can do if you want to build community support and then be an effective representative in Canberra. I'm here from Bowral in New South Wales on the land of the Gundungurra people. Pay my respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. And just as a personal statement, we're talking about substantial change. It's about time we had substantial change in terms of the recognition of our first Australians, not just in the Constitution as a voice and a treaty or whatever form it takes, and obviously dealing directly with the pervasive extent of disadvantage. But it remains a major challenge for whoever's in government. And after nearly 250 years, I think it's about time we did something about it. My purpose today is to talk a bit about the current political scene. I think there's a mounting disquiet right across the Australian communities, and there are about nearly 40 of these voices movements in different communities across the country, plus a number of other movements that are targeting particular members, you know, like Time's Up Angus or something like that. There are quite a few of these emerging, reflecting the fact that there's a feeling that the political process is disengaged from local communities, that many of the representatives that are elected don't actually represent the interests of their community. We saw that most conspicuously, I think, in the same-sex marriage vote, when the National Party was pretty confident, for example, that they'd get a majority of their members voting no, and 15 of 16 voted yes, and it came as a bit of a shock that they really didn't have those links to their community. Right now, of course, politics has just become increasingly, over my time in politics, increasingly a short-term game. point scoring game, shifting blame game, not focusing on the issues, letting the bigger issues drift, playing politics day to day. And in fact, today we have, with a marketing type as Prime Minister, a day-to-day focus on the political game. His vision runs to the next election, which I'm feeling will be towards the end of this year, probably before COP26, when he might have to take a substantive position on climate. But certainly it's an issue that, it's a Prime Minister, I should say, that's focused on the game of politics. Every day he looks at what it is that he needs to do today to win the politics of the day, the media of the day, and hope to shore up his chances to be re-elected. So if, it's a reactive government. It's not proactive about issues. If an issue breaks, they tend to do as little as possible as initially. Indeed, I think there's a cynical view that perhaps some of these issues might solve themselves. But then in the end, if you have to do something, well, you do as little as possible to get by. And over time, that's meant a very significant disconnect between what the communities that they represent want and what, in fact, are the positions that they take in Canberra. They lose sight of the national interest. A lot of them are in politics to make a difference, but of course, that increasingly becomes to make a difference for themselves or for their mates and not to actually govern in the national interest. And so I think we've come to a situation where there is this very strong growing sense of discontent in a lot of seats. Liberal, Labor, definitely. Across the board, people are concerned that they are not being represented. And we've seen post Cathy, of course, and Helen Haynes. We've seen Zali Steggall and the win she had against Tony Abbott, who had clearly lost touch with his electorate. And you're now seeing that in a number of other areas. I remember when I was in the ABC on the day that the Wentworth by-election was called. Turnbull had been beaten as the Prime Minister. And I said to Anthony Green and others that were there, look, I actually think that a strong independent Liberal could win this seat. And everybody laughed and said, it's a 17.5% margin. There's no way that's possible. But of course, it was possible. And a strong independent, Karen Phelps, did stand. She did pretty much run on climate. As I'd said at the time, if you run on climate as a predominant issue, and I knew that seat pretty well, having had that as my seat, I think that person could win. And the thing that shattered me at the end was when Karen won, the political reaction was, she only won by 1,800 votes. But that was 1,800 votes on top of 17.5%. Now Shah's inevitable to win that seat back. He's still sitting on a very large compared to the margin that Malcolm Turnbull had when he had the seat. So that tells you that there's a mood on, I think, an independent that's strongly focused on particular issues can actually make a very big difference in our political system today. And it's not inconceivable that strong independents could hold the balance of power in the lower house and the upper house after the next election. And then in some sort of loose alliance, they could focus on the quality of government, integrity in government, accountability in government, and the bigger issues like climate change and aged care and childcare and a whole host of other very significant issues, which are, although the government's throwing some money at some of these areas, they're not solving the problems, they're not reforming them, they're kicking the substance of the issue down the road. And so I've never seen a better set of circumstances in which, although, the Prime Minister's sitting pretty strongly in the polls, it's the two-party vote's about 50-50. I'm not sure how you can read those these days, but Morrison has kept a very large personal vote, net positive, against an Albanese opposition, which has not seemed to be that active, not seemed to be that effective. And I'm sure that Morrison is just holding things together between now and the next election. The budget was designed to do that, funding the issues that need to be dealt with. I think some staff have sat down with a checklist and took all the issues and all the constituencies that they had to do something about and check them off, not in the national interest. A lot of it was in the interest of mates or retaining particular seats or shoring up particular seats or whatever, and appearing to deal with issues. So we throw some money at aged care, throw some money at childcare, throw some money at mental illness, throw some money at the NDIS, but don't deal with the issues, the substantive issues that are there. And when I look at the issues that have been left to run, like climate, aged care, decades of neglect, and that was in fact the first Royal Commission's first report on aged care was about neglect. I mean, I get concerned that the national interest is being squandered at every turn. There's no shame anymore. in politics. There's very little compassion, as we've seen with the Villaruela family, and the inability to have an effective refugee strategy over now many years under both sides of politics. These are very big issues. They affect us domestically. They affect our standing internationally. And so I think that the challenge is there. It's there for communities to pick representatives that will actually be representatives, that will actually be part of a government, not a game playing short-term political point scoring, but part of an active government.
That's great. Thank you very much, Dr. John Hewson, speaking to us from Bowral, and we can thank the former Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull for the slightly dodgy connection that we're getting from Bowral. We're hearing you loud and clear, mostly, but certainly a little bit wavery, but we certainly got the bulk of it. So thank you very much. Stay with us, John Hewson, because we will take some questions from the floor as well. So to our next speaker, Cathy McGowan was elected to the federal seat of Indi in 2013 in that great wave of orange that dispensed of Sophie Mirabella, and again in 2016, literally changed the process of elected representation through the Voices for Indi model. During her time in politics, Cathy became an advocate and voice for regional Australia, First Nations issues and asylum seekers, and a new model for elected representation. Now, happily farming in the Indigo Valley, Cathy is here to speak to us on community engagement models, and that Voice is joining us.
Thank you. Thank you, Tracee. Thank you, John. And thank you, everybody at Voices for Mornington Peninsula for putting this together. I can see we've got 115 people on board on a Saturday afternoon. It's such a credit. So I've got 4 things I wanted to touch on, and then, of course, open up to questions. My first point is that better representation is possible and it's worth the work. So what we're all trying to do, we know it works. So it's not a hopeless task. The second thing I want to talk about is a bit about what success means individually for a region and for the nation. Then I want to talk about community engagement, some of the things that we know works. And then I want to talk about, well, me, then who? And if not now, then when? Which picks up on what John's been talking about, is the circumstances at this particular time, I think are ideal for what we're trying to do. So let me start with better representation is possible. So when we got together in 2012, which is almost 10 years ago, we did think it was hopeless, that we were a country group of people pissing into the wind, if you want. And the best we thought that we could do was make our seat marginal, and that if it was marginal and competitive, we could get change. And certainly that's what we did, we being in the community of North East Victoria. And we did better than make it marginal. We won that election by 439 votes, if I say, and then went on again in 2016 with a much stronger win. And in 2019, when I decided that I had other things I wanted to do with my life, and Helen Haynes stepped up, Helen won with a really good majority. And what was just so astounding, I think, for me, and really surprising, is that our movement wasn't based on a one-person leadership model. It was actually based on a community model of community representation. And that's what the community wanted more of. So that third win, when Helen Haynes won, just gave us such a clear indication that if you offered the community a choice, and it is of integrity and legitimate, the community will respond. And we've seen that happen in Wentworth and with Zali in Warringah, but also in other seats like in Mayo, where Rebecca Sharkey is virtually an independent, has been re-elected 3 times, and her community loves her. And in Tasmania with Andrew Wilkie in the seat of Clark, you know, he gets elected almost like, I think 70% of the people vote for him now. He's got a 70% majority. So communities love their independence when they get them. And so I wanted to just give you that sense of it's possible, it's work for sure, but my golly, it's worth doing. And I want to talk a little bit about what success means, because in my experience, while it was good to win, when we got together in 2013 on that election night, and we hadn't actually won, we had to do a recount, the community knew we had won at that level. Because for us, winning was not only about getting an independent up, and let me say, I think that's really important, but it was the way we ran our campaign is where we won. And we all knew we'd won because we'd been respectful, we'd been our best selves, and we'd engaged right across the community with so many people who had been feeling frustrated, who'd never had a chance to be listened to and to actually be heard, for their voices to be heard, and for them to engage in politics. So many people who got involved in our campaigns, it was the first time ever. And they finished the campaign thinking, oh my word, that was such good fun. I didn't know politics could be like that. And we knew we had won because we had taken the disillusionment, the disengagement that people, the cynicism that people had felt, and we turned it around. We'd reclaimed democracy for a community. And so we had won on that level. And so many individuals took up the work of participatory democracy. And they did it certainly in helping me and Helen get elected, but then they took it into local government, they took it into state government, and they took it into their community organisations. And we've got so many examples now in our community where community groups have come together, they've had that taste of success, and they've said, now we're going to do things really well. And if you're looking for a really lovely story, Yakandanda, that's my local town. And what we've been doing there with totally renewable Yakandanda, do a Google search, or Indigo Power, where we've set up a social enterprise buying and selling renewable energy. And most of those people who are involved in that project first met as part of our campaign. So there's so many levels where individuals win, but also the region wins, because Northeast Victoria, we were a beautiful electorate with the snowy mountains and wonderful valleys and beautiful food, but we were taken for granted. We had incredibly bad public transport, terrible mobile phone coverage, almost no internet. And as an independent, I was able to, and the community was able to work with me to make sure that we improve services. And I know it's similar down the Mornington Peninsula. There's so much that needs to be done. And having that competitive advantage of being a marginal seat, of being on the crossbench, just delivered so much to our community in things, but it gave us that incredible sense of pride that we actually stood up for ourselves, against the might of the Liberal Party, and we'd won. And that gave all of us such a sense of confidence that we could do so much more. And let me say, the nation is the better for a strong crossbench. Look, it's just what John said, and I fundamentally know that the work Zali's doing on climate, like she has introduced a private members bill that's taken the best of what many other countries have done and has presented it to the government. So she's given voice to what so many of us want to see. And what Helen Haynes is doing with integrity, on the crossbench, calling the government to account, being our voice. And then we could talk about what Rebecca's doing with aged care, what Andrew's doing with gambling, and what Jackie Lambie has done with the Veterans Affairs, that the people on the crossbench are making a huge difference and giving voice to our issues. And let me just talk for a minute about some of the things that I know communities can do. And when we're going to have a chance a little bit later to talk about it. So here's some of the things that I know that worked in Indi, is that we started out with 12 and we grew in that first election to 500, grew to 500 active volunteers, 700 volunteers in the second election. And in Helen Haynes' election in 2019, we had 1,800 people sign on to our values and committed to be respectful, to be their best selves, and to really go out and be advocates for participatory democracy. In the electorate, there is 100,000 basic voters. So we had 1% at least, and all their family and friends, of course, who are actually being public about their belief. So today, we've got online 124 people. So you have more now than we almost had in the beginning of our program. So you're so well established and ready to go. So we need to do what we call word of mouth. In Indi, we'd done the maths and we knew we needed 1 in 4 votes, 25,000 votes if we were going to make a difference. So that's the task we set ourselves, to go and talk within a group of people. We didn't have to get everybody to change their minds. There were die-hard Liberal and die-hard Labor, that's fine. But we needed 1 in 4 to go, okay, I'm going to give Cathy my first preference. And we got it. We in fact got something like 30,000 first preference votes. So there's a really important job for that word of mouth and individual people to speak up and say, well, this is what I'm going to do. Going to vote 1 Cathy. Okay, I'll give the Liberals my second vote, or Labor my second vote, or the Nats my second vote. But I'm going to give my first vote to Cathy. So we need that word of mouth. And that comes from people talking at home, at the school bus stop, in the libraries. And I know when I see Zali's stuff in Sydney, they all wear their T-shirts on the beach right through summer, and we're advocates that way. So we need each of us to actually commit to those conversations. And we set ourselves targets, 50 votes. So if we got 1 in 4 and we had 500 people, and between us we got 50 votes, we knew we could do it. So set yourself some targets. And then you've got to run a campaign. And the campaign, I have to say, can be the most fun. But part of the skill of the campaign is actually making it people friendly and having lots and lots of things that people can do. And I know Dennis Ginnivan's on board. And one of the things Dennis did during our campaign is he was part of the logistics. And we set up little community hubs, which were shop fronts or mobile centres where campaign people in our T-shirts gathered. And then we would speak to other people about what was possible. But very soon we had orange soup, pumpkin soup happening. And then we had little makeshift things where people would come with their sewing machines and they'd make flags and they'd make orange bunting and they'd make jewellery and make a whole lot of merchandise that they'd actually then sell and give away, but to promote the message of Cathy, because not everybody can talk about it, but lots of people can make things. So the women often bought their sewing machines, the blokes bought their saws and their paint brushes and made a whole lot of things. And we can talk more about some of the things we made. And then there's another thing about community engagement, that's what we're actually talking now, is building the base. And certainly the base is important to get your candidate elected. But after your candidate is elected, we don't want them just going off to Canberra and doing whatever they think. We've actually got to hold them to the commitment that the community's made. And even if you don't win, this whole community movement is incredibly important to keeping the seat competitive and holding whoever does get elected to the core principles of we want better. We don't want more of the same. And it's not going to happen just by having a campaign. You've got to exist for the longer term. So even after the election, the movement of Voices for Mornington Peninsula has got an incredibly important role, is to hold your candidate to be the best they can and to represent the community. And the fourth thing I want to talk about, and this is briefly before I come to the conclusion,
is we have to wrap. We've got about 1 minute left, Cathy, yeah. So we do need to move. Thank you. Yeah.
Politics is never going to change by us talking about it. It's only going to be changed because people step into the role. So my final word is for all of us to be the change we want to see, is to be, and as we do our campaign, to be consciously thinking, are we our best selves, and are we engaging with everybody in the way that we want politics to be? It's not just about them, it's about us.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Cathy McGowan. And a reminder that we are taking questions and collating questions through the Zoom chat function. If you have particular questions that you want to put to our panelists individually or more broadly on the aspiration of Voices for Mornington Peninsula and how we might achieve that as a community, this is an opportunity to hear from people who've got some pretty great perspective on that. Our third speaker is Louise Page, founding director of Voices for Mornington Peninsula, and known to many of us here as a founding president of Save Western Port, the mighty grassroots campaign that fought AGL and the state Labor government's intentions at Crib Point and won. Louise has lived on the Mornington Peninsula for over 20 years. She's worked in managerial roles in hospitality, risk management, set up her own consultancy business, and she continues to run that. Louise will be speaking very specifically about Voices of Mornington Peninsula and her experience bringing community together for a common goal. Welcome, Lou.
Thanks, Tracee. I must say it's a pretty hard gig to come after John Hewson and Cathy McGowan, but I'll do my best. Most of you know me from the Save Western Port campaign, if you saw a lot of that going on in the local papers and beyond. It's really heartening to see such a great turnout today, because the Save Western Port campaign started a lot like we're starting out. A group of locals who got together because they thought something was really wrong and they didn't like to see what was happening to the peninsula and they wanted to fix it. I think today's turnout and that Save Western Port movement is really a strong indication to us that there are so many committed people to the peninsula that we have here and how we can make a difference. The Mornington Peninsula is really quite a difficult place to have campaigns because it's so diverse, it's complex, it's got so many challenges being so close to Melbourne, and it has holiday makers, it gets inundated with tourists. You know, there's so much going on, and there's a great difference in the socio-demographics of it as well. I actually wrote the portion of the environmental assessment that was done for the AGL campaign. I wrote the economic bit, which revolved around jobs and all sorts of things. So it was a really interesting thing for me to finish on, because I really brought everything together that I'd learned through the community and put it in that document. But today, I need to get straight to it, is a bit like Cathy. I've got 4 topics. And first of all, I'll talk a little bit more about the Save Western Port campaign, and then about Voices and why I joined VMP. And I'm talking to you about that not because I think it's important that you know why I did, but it might help you understand where I came from, why I think it's important, because it wasn't something that I just fell into after Save Western Port. And you might need to go through the same thought process about what it might mean to you. And then I'll just finish up. But I think the Save Western Port campaign is a good one to consider in regards to an independent, because it has many of the similar aspects. We have something that's happening on the peninsula. I mean, that was one specific thing, but it focused our attention not only on local issue, but that particular campaign touched on a state level and federal. And because it involved the venue where they were talking about putting it, it involved the gas supply, and it talked about how our resources have been mismanaged because all our gas has been sent offshore, you know, all these different things that affected what was happening to us on the peninsula. It showed us what can be achieved against all the odds when we started, and really quickly. As I say, it was just a group of half a dozen of us got together, said, this isn't right, we don't like what's happening, what can we do about it? We were facing a huge corporation, AGL. We had the current government saying this is good for jobs and it'll put downward pressure on prices. Now, through our campaigning, we proved both of those things to be wrong, that neither of those things are really going to happen for us. But had we not campaigned, had we not got together as a community, none of that would have been exposed. It would not be brought to the public's attention, and nothing would have happened. We wouldn't have had an environmental assessment. It would have just gone under the radar, and it could have so easily have done that. So to Voices of Mornington Peninsula. So that when I heard that it was happening, and I was invited to one of the very early meetings, I thought, well, I'll go along to see what it's about, because I am not, contrary to what people might think, I'm not a very political person. I like issues. I'm the sort of person who likes to fix things. I like to see things get better, not be destroyed needlessly. So I went along and I listened to what was being said and the fundamentals of what it was going to look like, how it works. And I thought, you know, I think this is something that I need to get involved with, because it comes from the grassroots. As everybody has said, it comes from us. and it's not VMP saying, well, this is the person who might be the independent, and these are the views that we think are important. We collect the information from the community, you, and say, this is what we've found are the most important things to the Mornington Peninsula. And we need people who are going to represent those views, and they're going to stand strong for us. I came to it from the point of view that I'm disillusioned with politics, and I think a lot of people are. I think John touched on, there were two words that I didn't have in my list of the reasons why I joined VMP. Mine were transparency and accountability are the two that drive me insane, that we don't know what's going on. We can't even find out, it should be public information. And then people are just, there's no accountability. So millions, billions of dollars can be spent. Nobody's held to account. Like, who in their job is never held to account for things that don't happen the way they should, or at least have to explain it? I think we're really sorely lacking in leadership. I think that's a really, it's mind-boggling actually, but that, again, these are my own points of view, so you all have your own reasons. But the two that John touched on that I didn't have was no shame and integrity. And I added no remorse. There doesn't even seem to be anyone saying, geez, that was really wrong, we should have done better. It's like, oh, well, that's gone, what's next? And finally, this is really all I've got to say, and I'm hoping that people have questions, because I think I really want to hear from you. I received a couple of emails this morning that I thought really summed it up. People who I've met over the years on the peninsula, people I don't know well, so it's not that, just they're sort of out of the blue, the emails. But I thought it was really interesting to hear what they had to say. So one said, and I'm quoting directly from the short email, it was saying, thanks, we're glad you're involved with this. And he said, the situation in Canberra is truly frightening. The only solution is to get independents winning some seats. And the other was, I had a spontaneous conversation with a young mum at Balnarring Beach during lockdown, and we both agreed that change needed to happen from grassroots. And I think that pretty much sums it up. I hope you've got a somewhat better idea about what we're about and why it's important for you to get involved.
Thank you, Louise. As Louise has indicated there, this is the beginning of the process of finding a candidate that comes from a grassroots process that there will be more information about as the group moves on. But just to sort of answer a couple of questions that have been coming through on the chat, who's the candidate? This is the beginning of the process, and it will come as a result of this engagement process that the group is at the beginning of. So so Louise,
sorry,
can you speak to that? Yeah.
What I perhaps should have said, what I omitted saying here, because I get a bit carried away, is the thing that needs to be said is how we progress from here and how we get your views. And all of this is on our website and various places, but the most important thing is we need to talk to you. We need you to talk to other people, and we need that information, because we need to get that evidence about what it is that everybody wants. So will be kitchen table conversations. We'll be holding events. There's our survey online. There's so many different ways that you can talk to us, but that's what we need.
We'll continue to provide that information throughout the course of this session, and there will be breakout conversations as well, breakout opportunities. But we are getting some questions through, and I would encourage those of you that are engaged and really want to ask specific questions. This is a really great opportunity to do that. You can use the chat function on the Zoom. We have had a few come through, so I'm going to pose these questions. This is a broader question about, I guess, the role of the independent in that process when they're sitting in office. So, this is a good one for you, Cathy, I guess, to answer specifically. It comes from Patrick in Balnarring, and his question is, what is the power of the independents sitting there on the crossbench? The balance of power on many issues, even outside of the independents and the electorate. How many good independents do we need to have to sustain that role, I guess, on the crossbench?
Hello, Patrick and everybody. So it's almost an impossible question to answer. As many as we can get, I think the answer is because the crossbench then have the political power to call the parties to negotiate. But I want to start with, everybody thinks it's only when you've got the balance of power that you have real power. But that wasn't my experience. My experience in Parliament was that every single member of Parliament has political power because they represent their community. And being in the tent, being in Parliament House is just, you have access to the library to do your research. You have access to briefings from the department to learn about things. You have access to communities to take up issues. So even outside the actual voting, which takes place, there's just incredible opportunities to get things done. And I could have spent my whole time in Parliament. I mean, I had to do the voting, but just working for my communities, being in Parliament. So there's infinite opportunities. But then what I've been watching in Parliament now is that the work of Zali and Helen, for example, on climate and on integrity, are actually forcing the government to do things that they wouldn't have done. Now, they haven't won the integrity debate yet. The government still keeps pushing it to the back burner, but they know they're on notice. And it also forces Labor to actually answer up, because those two parties can't afford to have the crossbench having the voice. They've got to be responding. But it all depends on the quality. And the truth is, it depends on the quality of your candidate. So many people on the backbench on either side are what I call foot soldiers, and they're good people. They're often good blokes, but they vote the way that they've got to vote. When you're an independent, you don't do that. You're not a foot soldier. Every single vote is a conscience vote, and you have your community, have you got it right? So to me, that's the fundamental power of the crossbench, is they represent their community, they check in with their community, and they're not beholden to the parties, and they're not beholden to the people that buy off the parties. So you know what you're getting, and that's the real power of it.
Can I just add?
Yes.
Add to that. Look, the focus of balance of power is usually on the numbers, but you can also turn it around and say the power of the balance, and the fact that you are there with a platform to exercise a voice on an issue. And you can actually move the government and the opposition without their members having to cross the floor. In the end, that may be the way it was. But certainly, she came in with an issue, faced it and forced it. And I do think, though they're putting both the integrity and the climate bill on the back burner all the time, the momentum beyond them is much greater. And so I think that in the end, they will need to do something. They will need to respond in some effective way. And so I do think that the power of the balance is a very important dimension of the opportunity that an independent has. But it does, as Cathy says, depend on the quality of that person and their capacity to attract the media and to exercise that platform effectively.
Thanks very much, John and Cathy. I'll move to another question, and it's specifically really for Louise on how Voices of Mornington Peninsula is going to collate the issues that are important to local residents in that process of determining who that representative might be as the independent candidate.
Yeah. So we have particular questions that we've formulated, which will give us the data that we know what it is that people want. And we'll put all that information together through the various ways that I mentioned, through surveys. We'll hold kitchen table conversations, we'll hold events like this, whatever it is, we will collate that, we will gather that information and then collate it into a report, which will then be available for people to see what it is that the Mornington Peninsula people want. And that is what we can use to determine what sort of candidate we need. The choice of candidate, I have to say, is not again, that doesn't fall back to us as the directors of VMP. That's a community decision. And that's one of the fundamental reasons why I actually joined VMP, is that it's not my decision, not my beliefs, not my opinion that's driving this, or any of the other people who are involved with VMP at this point. It's what the community want. And that's what it comes down to, the community. And that's why I joined.
It'd be interesting to hear from Cathy on this, actually. Cathy, when you were first involved in the Voices for Indi, did you immediately know you wanted to be the candidate? You know, how did that work in that example?
I have to say no, it was a journey. And I was very happy in my own life, minding my own business. But it was the community, and in particular a group of young people in the community, who said, Cathy, we think you're the one. You know, you talk about all this stuff and somebody's got to step up, and we think it's you. And initially I thought, well, yes, well, we could find somebody else. I don't want to be the one. And we started asking, you know, famous people, footy players, media people, you know, the local stars, and they said, musicians, and they said, no, we're not going to do it. We think you would do it. But in you doing it, Cathy, we understand that you're one of the team and we're going to be with you. So you might be the spokesperson at the moment, but we're not actually making you anything more important than just be the person. And it was very much that collective sense that, okay, I could do the job for a bit, do it for, 2 terms or 3 terms, whatever, and then the community would take ownership of it. So I never felt that I was carrying the full burden of something that I couldn't do. And it was true, the community stood, and the community and the leadership team stood by me so strongly that I was never alone. And I was always once I said yes, I felt very safe in the job. But it was a bit of a journey, and I had to be convinced by my community that they weren't going to just leave me high and dry, that if I did put up my hand, that they would, and they did, and they still do. So yeah, it was a journey. And I think the community got it right, if I say so, because, and with Helen Haynes, again, Helen wasn't famous, but people knew that she was really good, that she was trustworthy and honest, and she'd been a midwife, and, you know, she was loved by the community. So the community got a bit of a nous about who's going to work for you.
Which brings me to the next question, actually, and it speaks, probably bounce back to you, Louise, in terms of the positioning, where you're imagining. I understand what you're saying, that this will come from the information that comes through this engagement process. But I guess we have to sort of be really pragmatic and realistic. We have a sitting member who has been the elected representative for 20 years, the Federal Health Minister. That is clearly the identifiable target, and a 2-party system that hasn't necessarily delivered for people who have felt disgruntled or disenfranchised by that process, hence where we are today. So the question is really around any key demographic targets that you might be thinking about in terms of finding traction with finding a place to sort of maneuver through what is that sort of very dominant 2-party system.
I have to say, I mean, we discuss demographics. Obviously, we discuss previous results, and we discuss the current situation. What I'm particularly strong on, and the rest of the directors are, is that again, it's a tricky one, because people want answers on, well, how are you going to do it? And to my mind, it is that we just need to make sure we engage everybody. It's not about, well, we're going to target this group or we're going to target another group. It's, we want to get everybody involved, and that means we need the community to do that. We need the community to get out there and talk to other people and have kitchen table conversations, and we need that diversity, and that's really important. I mean, we'll obviously make sure that when we're holding events, we'll cover all the areas and do all those sorts of things. But in terms of specific targets, we haven't set that, because this needs to be everybody coming together.
I'll come back to you, Dr. Hewson, in terms of your reading the political mood, I guess, more broadly, and the appetite for the independents. You know, we've heard the narrative, I guess, in the recent couple of federal elections about the rise of the independent. Is that a narrative that is actually a legitimate narrative, or do you think it's one that still sits on the outside of that sort of dominant two-party system?
I think it's taken some time to get to where we are, but I think there's now momentum for significant change. And I wouldn't be surprised to see a wide range of independents, significant independents, challenging representatives of both the major parties at the next election. And I think the timing is right. I mean, there is a very strong sentiment that government doesn't govern for the average person. It doesn't govern in the national interest. It certainly is, most of the members have lost track of their community in many ways. And I think that you're seeing that come through in so many ways. Now, it's difficult when you look at the overall assessment. Most people imagine that Morrison will be re-elected. He hasn't got much of an opposition at this stage. Albanese hasn't offered much of an alternative. He's net positive in the polls all the time. He's 50-50 or 40-52-48, whatever, most of the time. And people don't want to rock the boat in the midst of a COVID crisis, you know, that you want to see, you know, the incumbents, the value of incumbents is serious. But having said that, I think appealing to communities for the lack of effective representation in general and in terms of particular issues, I think will make a difference, because there are a lot of big issues that have just been left to drift. And when you look at the government, there is no accountability. It staggers a lot of people that people can do the sort of things that they've done for years and not be held accountable. We had one yesterday with witness Kay and Bernard Kaleri about the government down and how it's spying on the East Timorese. You know, these are very significant offences, and it's the whistleblower that ends up getting penalised, and the issue skates by. And in those circumstances, you've had a multiplicity of examples now, big and small, of where there's been no accountability for inaction. You've seen it with the vaccine rollout. You've seen it with aged care, 3 decades of neglect. You've seen it with issues where the bottom line is the issues left adrift, and that has a big impact over time on the lives of people and the aspirations they have of the political system.
Lots to talk about. We are going to break into breakout rooms shortly, and that will happen automatically. But as I understand it, questions, it is pretty hard to sort of try and we're sort of all working off multiple screens here and all remotely. So thank you for your patience in terms of how we're doing this with the logistics. We would all dearly love to be in one room and have that wonderful opportunity to being together as a community, and it's fantastic that everyone's sticking with us in what we've got here. So everyone will be moved into breakout rooms for more intimate conversation, but we are going to enjoy a little bit of music now from much loved local singer-songwriter Tim Stout, who people might be familiar with during the lockdown, did the beautiful 6 at 6 for us during lockdown, and he is with us today. A reminder that you can go to those QR codes while Tim is singing to sign up for updates. We're all very well versed with using our phones around QR codes. So without any further ado, I'm delighted to introduce the gorgeous Tim Stout. I hope. Tim, are you there?
I unmute myself.
Ah.
Technology is a wonderful thing. I was dreaming in my dreaming of an aspect bright and fair, and my sleeping, it was broken, but my dream, it lingered near in the form of shining valley where the pure air recognized, and my senses newly open, I awaken to the cry. that the people have the power to redeem the work of the fool upon the meek. The graces shower, it's decreed. The people rule. People have the power. People have the power. People have the power. People have the power. Vengeful aspects became suspect, bending low as if to hear. And the armies ceased advancing because the people had their ear. And the shepherds and the soldiers lay beneath among the stars, exchanging visions, laying on to waste in the dust, in the fall, the shining valleys where the pure air recognized. And my senses newly opened, I awaken to the cry. People have the power. People have the power. People have the power. People have the power. Power to dream, to rule. From fools, it's the creed. People rule. It's the creed. People rule. Where there were deserts, I saw fountains. Like cream, the waters rise, and we stroll there together, with none to laugh or criticize. And the leopard and the lamb, they together truly bound. I was hoping, in my hoping, to recall what I had found. I was dreaming, in my dreaming, God knows, a purer view. As I lay down to my sleeping, I commit my dream to you. People have the power. People have the power. People have the power. People have the power. The power to dream, to rule, to wrestle the world from fools. It's the creed. People rule. It's the creed. The people rule. People have the power. People have the power. People have the power. People have the power. The power to dream, to rule, to wrestle the world from fools. It's the creed. The people rule. It's the creed. The people rule. People have the power.
Thank you very much, Tim. Nothing beats a little bit of Tim Stark doing Patti Smith on a Saturday afternoon on the Mornington Peninsula. So thank you so much. And indeed, people do have the power. This is what this process is about. We are about to break everyone into some breakout rooms. There will be a volunteer from Voices from Mornington Peninsula in each group. But if there's not, we will ask that someone takes lead just to sort of report back, because there will be an opportunity to report back. So some of those questions that are coming through that I haven't been able to get to is a good opportunity to talk about in the breakout session. So I think we'll all just individually be disappearing off as we're moving off. In the event that Cathy and John do leave us, I'm not sure what their timeframes are, but just formally taking an opportunity to thank Cathy McGowan and John Hewson for being with us this afternoon, as well as we break off into our smaller chat rooms to drill down on some of those points that people are rushing through in the chat now. It's coming through. So I'll leave you to have those conversations with each other, and then we'll come back and get a summary of what some of those conversations were all about. But thanks so much to Cathy McGowan and John Hewson for being with us this afternoon and kicking off this campaign, really, to find an independent who might run under that banner in the upcoming election. So thanks so much to both of you.
For those who are still in and not in a breakout group, there should have been a request on your screen to join a breakout group, so you can choose to join a breakout group. If that hasn't happened for you, I'm sorry about that, but the breakout groups will be back in about probably another 8 minutes or so, and we'll be hearing from a couple of the groups about what they discussed with the main question. So how many people do we have here? Some of you may have chosen not to go to a breakout group, and that's fine. there's only about 10 people here. If you would like to make this another breakout group, you're welcome to unmute your microphone if you want to partake in that same question here. For some reason, it might not have taken you to a group. So let me know if that's the case. Just unmute your mic and we can talk about what stood out for you from the presentations in relation to voices here. Otherwise, you're welcome to stay mute and keep your video off if that's your choice. No worries.
Hi, Sean. It's Julia from Say Western Port. How are you going?
Oh, good, Julia. How are you?
Good. I'm joining very late, so I've just been out in the garden weeding, and I'm sorry to be coming in so late. Is it going to be possible to get the presentation online or anything like that?
Yeah, it's being recorded, Julia, so we'll post it online later. So everybody you might have had to, when you come in, say, yes, I agree to being recorded. Yep, so we'll put that online later. Yeah. Okay. It was really good. Cathy and John and Louise were amazing, and Tim just did a great song with Patti Smith, Powers with the People. So pretty cool, and covered a whole range of topics. So people are just looking at the question now, which I'll put back on screen for you. I'll show you now. So it's just this question: what stood out for you from the presentations that relates to your wishes for true representation on the Mornington Peninsula? So you've been quite active in that space with the Save Western Port, so you get that bit pretty well, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm sorry I missed the presentation though, but I'll definitely catch up with it.
Okay, excuse me just for a moment. I've just got to take a call. Sorry.
No worries. So it says underneath the question there, it says sign up for updates. And then it says, so I hit that with my QR code or, my phone. And then it's got something about a bill paying thing. So it's weird. Did anyone else know anything about that?
I haven't checked it, Julie, but use the website address at the bottom. You'll go straight to the website.
Oh, good. Yeah, thanks for that.
And from there you can, put down your details and then receive all the updates.
Yeah, better to do it that way.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Patty Pietramonico. This is my first time to be watching all of this stuff.
Hi, Peter.
Hi, Michael. I'm really hopeful that we can kind of find a candidate that would actually do something for the peninsula, like make us regional. Would be a really good start, I think.
You think that?
Yeah.
But
as far as protecting us from the urban sprawl and whatnot?
Protecting us from just about everything, really.
Yeah.
We cannot go through another summer like we did last summer.
What do you mean?
We just can't do this anymore. It's just impossible.
What do you mean particularly?
The behaviours of people using our beaches, especially Safety Beach. So apparently at 4 o'clock in the morning, you go up down to Safety Beach and you put up your cabanas, and then you have your jet skis down there, and then you have jerry cans down there with people smoking. It's hilarious. And you just keep filling up your jet skis, and you try and you ring the local council. They can do nothing because they don't own each of the pathways. Then the sand is owned by the Department of Environment and Lands and something else. And then fisheries own the water. And so everybody's trying to duck the responsibility. It was shocking. The behaviours, there was no social distancing. Yeah. We've done it hard down here, and everybody seems to think, that we haven't. We need to just be regional and be done with it.
And how would that protect us from what you were just describing?
I think then, you just didn't have
in 2021. So thank you, Susan. If you can pop yourself back on mute, that'd be great. Is there anyone else that would like to contribute their thoughts on what true representation looks like, and particularly in regards to the presentations that have been made so far?
Well, I would agree with the last speaker that the quality of the candidate makes all the difference. I would love to be wrong about my worries about an insurmountable majority. I would love to be wrong, but it's a lot to do with the quality of the person. And yes, there are concerns which are much beyond the peninsula, like climate change, like people put into internment camps for ever, I mean, these are horrible things which make me very embarrassed about being Australian.
Thank you, Tony. The quality of the candidate is obviously really, really critical. And I think one of the temptations that Cathy McGowan was talking about is to seek out someone that's got a public profile, sports people, entertainers, and so forth. And they offer...
I haven't seen a survey.
The survey is one of those QR codes. You find a link to the survey.
Okay.
Thank you.
I have to figure out the QR code on an iPad, which is really much more difficult. But that's all right.
It's on the website though, isn't it? You don't have to go through the QR code. You can just go on the website. Voices.
Oh, okay.
I think we're going back to... Sorry, I just...
That's interesting, David. I hadn't heard of donut economics, so I think that's...
So we've got some new people in the room. So, Hi, Sean, Esther.
Hi, sorry.
Hi.
Computer just flipped out and we're back.
Oh, well, nice to see you.
Hello.
Zach here as well.
Yeah.
Hey, Zach.
Hi, Zach.
So
we've just, I'll just perhaps give you a very quick rundown of what's been said so far. So we talked a bit about the transparency and accountability, two of the top statements of the day. Power dynamics, about the individuals or the part of the community on the peninsula that's unheard and they don't get a voice. Perhaps the disadvantage, just the people that don't get on the radar, maybe. About addressing the real issues for us on the peninsula. That the Mornington Peninsula is in a very much a transitional period. I mean, I think we've all seen that it's changed, dramatically changing. And then touching on how some of the things that Cathy said really resonated about being our best selves and respect, being the best we can, and getting the core values.
Yeah, I think that point really resonated with me as well. I was really thinking, like just in terms of representation and seeing someone who, like, listening to Cathy talk and thinking that she was somebody's candidate and that she stood for an electorate, and just thinking like how amazing it would be to have someone with that kind of integrity and that kind of transparency and that kind of like real like authenticity, I think, because so much of what we see from our politicians often is like a real lack of authenticity. And I think, just being able to, like see someone being their best selves and being real.
There's no respect down here at all. There is absolutely no respect at all. And we're about to go through school holidays yet again, where people can't go to Queensland, so they'll all come down here, and we're going to go through our usual frigging nightmare.
Yeah.
And it is a nightmare.
Yeah.
Okay. Definitely love coming here, and I would love to see future generations enjoy the peninsula. So
we're about to go back into the main group, so it was lovely meeting you all.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
I'm not sure what happens now. I think we just have to leave the room and go back, I think. Does anybody know how to put? I have to go. Let's leave the breakout room.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. See ya.
Bye.
So in the questionnaire, we get to kind of say what sort of person we're looking for.
That's the purpose of
excuse me,
conducting the kitchen table conversations. Yeah.
Excuse me, Michael. Sorry,
Back.
everyone's coming back to the main group now, just to let you know. Yep. So
Right.
if we just finish up, we'll just go back to the mute mode and Tracee will take over again. Cool. Just let you know. Okay.
Oh. So while we're waiting, Michael, can you just, oh, okay, you're back. Doesn't matter.
I think we all are coming back into the main room at the moment.
Yeah, here we are.
So we're all coming back to the main room now. So thank you, and I hope that those conversations have been successful in your smaller groups. We've got some time now to hear from the leader or the convener of each of those breakout sessions. And because of the numbers, actually, because we had sort of 150 odd people, we've got quite a lot of groups to get through. So if you could just come back in and to mute your microphones as you come back into the main group. And then we'll look to, I think I might need some help with some comms actually myself at the moment, but I think we're just going to roll through. If I could be prompted with some group names, that would be great on who is, okay, all right. So I'm hoping that everyone is back, and if people could be muting microphones while they're coming back in. And we might just start with Adrian's group to summarise some of those key things were, Adrian, in your group.
Thanks, Tracee. We had a real discussion. Some strong themes that initially came through included that sense that the sitting incumbent MP for Flinders on the Mornington Peninsula is untouchable. But we also talked about, the sort of message that Cathy McGowan provided about that. We had an interesting conversation about what makes a quality candidate, and there was a very strong feeling that a quality candidate is so important to be effective. And we talked about whether the point that Cathy made really on how much a profile of someone, especially with reasonably short notice before the upcoming election, how much we should be seeking out someone who's got an existing profile. And there seemed to be a feeling that, substance above profile, that was really important. So we're much better to have someone who's, really intelligent and connecting with the community, being able to articulate their issues in a way that is representative of the community, and that we would quickly build a profile with someone like that. It would be more important than just grabbing someone because they're well known.
Yeah, fantastic feedback from your group. Sarah Russell's group. Sarah, are you back with us in the room?
Yeah, I'm here. We had a slightly different conversation, and we energised people in our group. They thought the speakers were speaking what was called our language, so they really connected with the speakers. Someone mentioned having felt very powerless for the last decade or more, and had been a member of the ALP or a supporter, but now just didn't feel like anyone was really representing them anymore. So that was great. They felt very positive at the possibility that we might actually get a representative on the peninsula who actually represents us. A very good question, actually, somebody asked, and that was, is the candidate we choose representing us, or are we going to be supporting the candidate? But it's both. we're going to get a candidate who represents us, and then we're going to support them. But it was kind of interesting to reflect on Julia Banks's election campaign, and she got quite close. Some people thought she had some baggage, some people thought she didn't, but nonetheless, we feel like we've got a chance, and that's positive. To feel we've got a chance of getting an independent up was very, very good. Things like what John Hewson spoke about, the no accountability, no shame, the lack of remorse in this party now, that really stood out for everybody. And really the idea we need a change and want to change. I think we signed up new members as well, so that's exciting.
Fantastic. Okay, Louise's group.
Unmute. There we go. There we go. So very similar thoughts. Much talk about the qualities that we it's sad to be thinking what we should have. It's what should just be there. Transparency, accountability, the power dynamics that are there now that we need to, it's like getting back to basics is really what we were all talking about. So again, reflecting on the no shame, no remorse, the vested interest, and how we need somebody who's truly authentic and authentic to the community. So representing their views. Need to get down to back to basics again about addressing the real issues. A mention about the Mornington Peninsula being in that transitional period, how the Mornington Peninsula is changing. And the other thing that really resonated with people was about Cathy's comments about being our best selves and respect and being the best that we can, and getting a person who holds those core values. And lastly, the comment towards the end there was John's comment about not the balance of power, but the power of balance. That really resonated with them too.
Okay, thanks, Louise. Is Michelle's group there?
Thanks very much, Tracee. A couple of key comments from our group was, I think overwhelmingly everyone was pretty much inspired by what Cathy had to say, so that's really fantastic. One main comment was that could we also be focusing on the state election as well as the federal election? So I think that that's one issue that we need to consider. Currently, people feel that their voices are not being heard, and so they're really looking forward to having someone drawn from the community who can really represent the voice of the community. And also, I think a lot of excitement about the possibility of having someone independent and really engaging, having the community working together were the key points from our group, I think.
Thanks, Michelle. Michael's group. Is there a mic? Yes, there is.
Hi, Tracee. My internet failed right at the time I was meant to get into a group, so I didn't actually facilitate a group.
To see you, another founding, a founder of the VMP, and just another reminder about infrastructure on the peninsula. Sally's group. That might be Sally Bailey's group. Frank's group.
Sorry,
Frank?
Tracee.
Sal, is that you?
Yes, hi. I got into it a little bit late too. I had a bit of a glitch. And really we, I think I couldn't talk a little bit about what the next stage might be and how people might interact with voices and the few things that are probably going to be going on the kitchen tables and also being able to get into communities and making sure that that it is a broad spectrum of people that get spoken to, that young people are included in this. So we didn't come up with any particular answers at all, but we just talked about a few of those things.
Great, thanks, Sal. Frank's group.
Hello. Yes, many of the same topics were covered, particularly in the sense that that John, Cathy, and Louise were kind of speaking for them, that there was a few people were saying that they thought there was a growing heart as well as a growing anger within the community. And this was because of the erosion of values in politics and the smugness and the dedication to winning at all costs. So again, there was an emphasis on accountability, transparency, and compassion that seem to be lost in politics. And it's something that's rising throughout the community, that the community wants participation.
Great, Frank. Miranda, how did your group go?
I just posted a comment in the chat about that, actually. I didn't realise I was the convener, but I took a bit of a lead role anyway, so that worked. We definitely felt like that transparency and accountability were seriously lacking at the moment, and it would be great to see someone in that Cathy embodied that really well in her role, and that's very inspiring and definitely something to aim for. That greater integrity would be fantastic, and that Zali Steggall's push for the Integrity Commission, I think it was very hopeful. So there was a concern that things like robo-debt and sports rorts and all these things, that there have been zero consequences from this, that there's no accountability for these terrible policies and strategies. And a sense too that people feel disconnected from politics on the Mornington Peninsula, maybe generally, that they're not feeling represented, that they don't feel that they have a voice, and so people have sort of given up. One of the people in the group was the vote counter, I can't think of the word for it now. He said 7% of the votes came back as donkey votes.
Scrutineer.
Real worry. If we can, yes, scrutineer. If we could harness some of those, that'd be fantastic. But also we ended on the note of saying that there's a great sense of hope to come from a movement like Voices groups, and that we can make change. It's pretty exciting.
Thanks, Miranda. I think what's also been demonstrated in this process is that we're all kind of working with people many of whom have met before, making, kind of finding out what we all think about things, and that's kind of key to what this is about, bringing people together. Is Bev there to tell us what your group talked about, Bev? Might have lost Bev. Anyone in Bev's group that's still with us that might be able to tell us? How about Courtney's group? Courtney, are you still with us? Anne Jenkins group. I feel like I'm reading a raffle.
I might be able to speak. I'm not sure if Courtney, we didn't have a moderator in our group, but we did have a Courtney in our group. So maybe that was the one you wanted. We were sort of generally excited about the idea of having of the movement and the opportunity to potentially have representation that actually represents us. There was the idea that only seeking 1 in 4 votes seemed sort of really approachable. We had Cathy McGowan in our group, so there was also some questions that were directed to her, one of which was how do we avoid or how do we sort of try to combat potential pork barrelling that might happen from the incumbent. And Cathy's response to that was just basically call it out and be incredibly transparent so that everything can, we can shine light on that kind of stuff. There was also, we all sort of reflected on the difficulty into some of those harder to reach demographics, and how we're interested to know how the movement would try to get to some of those harder to engage people, and also just kept coming back to the importance of diversity.
Thanks, Rach. Thanks for speaking on behalf of your group. We have got a couple, if there's groups that we've missed, you can be posting those commentaries in the chat. I'm just going to try for a couple, because I do think it's a really important part of actually representing what's happened here today and getting a sense of who's come together. So is Anne Rankin still with us? Anne Rankin's group, Can someone speak to that group?
Simon Brooks,
Ah,
Tracee,
hi, Simon.
Messages for that group.
Yep.
Okay, Simon.
Yeah. Hi, Tracee. Thanks, John. John Eldridge. Yeah, our group, I suppose I took the lead. I knew a few of the people in our group too, which was great. So there was a general conversation about how it seems to be that there is a complete lack of integrity, that sort of moral compass that we would expect our leaders to have seems to have been put by the wayside. So that was one comment. That was one strong theme that came through. There's also concerns about the social and economic divide that seems to be growing, and the crisis that is COVID has seemed to magnify that divide. So that was another theme. Another person also mentioned the difficulty of working through the existing political party system. So being a member of an existing major political party, being able to cut through and get information and have that conversation with the party and actually try and drive change through the existing political parties was problematic. The other observation that I thought was pretty significant was in the past there were leaders who came up and led from the front, I suppose, from the top down. And the example of Malcolm Fraser driving the refugee crisis from Vietnam was raised. He did that against a lot of opinion. With the popularist and 24/7 sort of media cycle, people in positions of leadership are too scared to make these sorts of decisions. So it was felt that the grassroots, the ground up approach was the only one that was going to really bring about change.
All right.
Yeah. So
thanks, Simon.
Those were the main things.
I'm getting prompts from multiple sources now with various groups. We've had a lot of people come through, and I think it is actually that we hear from each other. Liz Dodds, are you still with us to tell us what your group talked about? Liz? I did see you there. Are you still there?
I can jump in, Tracee.
Yeah, I'm here. Maybe Brett, is that Brett?
Yeah.
Yeah, you might be better to talk.
Okay. Thanks, Brett.
That's all right. A lot of the issues have already been covered, but we talked about improving transparency and accountability in government with the current low standards. And we also talked about just questions how to overcome voter apathy with other campaigns that are currently underway with Arthur Seat, and talked about potential qualities in the best candidate, whether it's a female or in their communication style and that sort of thing.
The group will be collating these. I'm just sort of passing on information. So all of this information will be collated and have an opportunity to talk more about, obviously. Keith Old, do you also convened a group? Are you still with us, Keith?
Yes, I am. I didn't actually convene the group, but once again, we didn't have a convener. But
can you speak for the group?
I can, yes.
Great.
Pretty well. It was a lot of it has already been said. We spoke at length about the task in front of us, particularly with Greg Hunt as the incumbent, and there was a little bit of pessimism about that, but also a little bit of optimism. And I think what the lesson that we think we took from Cathy's speech was that it's not just an individual taking on someone like Greg Hunt, it's a team, and that team needs to work together. They then need to support that representative going forward. So a little bit about the challenge, but also a way to meet that challenge. We felt that all three talkers really echoed our views on the current political situation. And we also thought that the Save Western Port campaign was a very good example of how these things can actually turn things around, because that was facing the chances of that success, if you had looked at it at the very beginning, weren't great. And we had a representative from that group in our group, and the comment was that It was just through talking to everyone involved constantly, month by month, just keeping up the talk, keeping liaising with people and making sure that you took their views into account and answered their questions and disputed the falsehoods. You've just got to keep doing it. The one caveat to a lot of that is we may not have a lot of time in terms of really getting out to a lot of individuals and a lot of groups and really turning them around. If there's an election in 3 or 4 months, then it might be difficult to achieve that. But yeah, very supportive. One final question was raised about how it's all going to be paid for. That was a question that came up.
We will hear from the chair. We've got just one more, and then we'll hear from Kate Lardner again. Thanks so much, Keith, and thanks for speaking for your group. We had, happily, we also had a couple of, at least 2 that I saw, and some former councillors as well. But councillors Kerry McCafferty and Sarah Race, the current Deputy Mayor of the Shire, were also with us in a group. So I'm hoping Kerry and Sarah, who seem to be sharing the screen, might be able to speak for the discussions in their group.
Hi, Tracee. We had a great chat. We had some really, really great people in our room. Some of the issues that came up, or the key issues that came up, were that people are really excited about representative democracy. People are really excited about, or the conversation was really being heard finally. And another comment was that they're excited about real community involvement at a grassroots level. So, and that sort of reflected back to say, you know, people are really sick of the party politics. They're sick of the politicking and the you know, gunning for the next election and actually not having any substance to what they're pursuing. And the other key issue that came up was diversity. That was mentioned a couple of times. I think, you know, people are sort of fed up with that classic old white man, you know, leading the way. We really, really need some diversity. We can't just keep looking to the same demographic to, you know, be influencing policy. It's just, it's not working. It hasn't worked. So was there any other things that?
Yeah, it's about keeping the bastards honest.
Yes.
That came up. Yeah. I was surprised that we still have to do that. Apologies for my language.
Yeah. That was actually, it was really nice to hear that. It was like, oh yes, that's what we're doing. We're still doing that. So yeah, those were the key issues that came up in our group. Diversity, the need for diversity, being fed up with party politics, and really needing some community involvement and representation.
Thanks, councillors, very much. I will acknowledge it's mainly because it's been hard to see how many people have been part of this, but I will acknowledge Councillor Despi O'Connor, the Mayor of the Shire, has also been part of this conversation. So thank you, Councillor. We'll close with Kate. So we'll bring back out the Chair of Voices of Mornington Peninsula, Dr. Kate Lardner, to speak to the conversation in her group and to conclude some concluding remarks and where to now in terms of the next step for the group. So, Kate.
Thanks, Tracee. Thanks everyone for participating in the conversations. I guess generally, broadly, what I'm hearing is that there is a real thirst for change, which is really exciting, and a feeling of disconnect between people's decision makers and their everyday lives. So I guess Voices of Mornington Peninsula has set up to come together and achieve true representation. But what we really need is to be able to hear from everyone in our community if we are to truly represent our community. So it would really help us if you were able to complete our community survey. We'll be emailing this out after the event, but it's also on our website and Facebook page. And this is our tool for finding out what issues are pertinent to you and what qualities you would like to see in an incumbent. I'm also hearing that a lot of people have questions about BNP. How will we fund the election campaign? How will we achieve the goal? How will we seek and elect a candidate? So we encourage you just to jump straight in and get involved to learn about all of this and to help shape it. Basically, whether you're a member of a political party or not, we want everyone, and together it is about shaping this and building it together, this movement. But yes, we obviously have a lot of underlying plans ahead. So we really encourage you to get involved. And then we need to reach out to thousands of people like you who have come here today. For that, we need people to sign up to become a member so that we can build our volunteer base and reach the wider community in a variety of ways. I guess most importantly, we need to have fun doing this. I've had a lot of fun working with the directors and the broader VMP team. We work hard, but it's great to also remember that we're in this for the long haul. So we've got the federal election coming up. We will have the state election after that. And we're focusing on council, state and federal elections. So this will be an ongoing thing. I want to say a huge thank you to our speakers and panel, Dr. John Hewson, Cathy McGowan and Louise Page. Big thank you to Tim Stout for his incredible tune. And thank you to the VMP directors and the wider VMP volunteer group who've worked really hard to make this happen today. And also to all of you who've attended. Basically, we can't exist without you. We need you. You are the community that we're trying to represent. So thanks for coming today. And Tracee, you're incredible. Thank you so much. You've made the event really fun and seamless. So thank you for giving your time to us today. And I'll hand back to you.
Look, thanks, Kate. And look, you know, I'm aware that there's people I haven't got to. There was a note that's come through from Alice's group, who also reiterated some points about, you know, optimism fueled by Cathy, and a couple of other people who've got their hands up. And my apologies in that we are at time, and I'm conscious that it is, you know, we have been going for an hour and 45 minutes. We still have 75 people on the call, and the invitation there from Kate, if you want further information, to go to those QR codes, be involved and be an active participant in grassroots-led democracy. So thanks to everyone for being part of it. I wish all of you the best in the momentum and the traction, and time now to reintroduce the gorgeous Tim Stout, who is going to play us out. Our thanks and acknowledgement to the Boonwurrung people who on whose land we have convened this afternoon's conversation, and we look forward to input from our First Nations brothers and sisters on this journey as well, and involvement. So thank you, Tim. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night, and I'll see you all on the flip side.
Good night, everyone, and thank you.
Thank you.
It's a song I wrote a while ago, and it seemed appropriate for the light. Starts with a thought, a bright idea, a brand new plan to get you there from here. Anything you can see in your mind's eye can be your reality if you dare to believe. If you find the light inside, and then the universe will provide. Find the light, find the light. The glass half full is the right attitude. It'll pull you through. getting tough on you. Anything you can see in your mind's eye can be your reality. If you dare to believe, then the universe will provide. If you find the light inside, find the light, find the light. You gotta find the light, find the light inside, find the light, find the light inside, find the light. Starts with the thought, starts with the thought, starts with the thought.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Tim. Good night, everybody. Good night. See you later. Bye.
Bye. Thanks all.
Well done, Timmy. Thank you, mate. Well done.
You're welcome, mate.
Thank you all. I think some of the directors and main volunteers are going to stay on just for a debrief. Well done,
The
everybody.
loiterers are still here. I can see you, Paul.
Yeah, we've got 28 people still here.
All the best, Sean.
Thank you, Tim.
You nailed it, mate. Thank you so much, mate. Great energy. Thanks for bringing it.
Cheers, mate.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
fantastic. Bye-bye.
Hey, baby. The dog. You can't see.
Okay. Thanks to everybody who's partaken today. Really appreciate the whole community getting involved. Now we are just going to have a short meeting with the VMP directors and others. We'll stop recording and the meeting's over. So thanks, everyone. Really appreciate it. Great effort. And big thanks to Tracee again and Dr. Hewson and Cathy McGowan. Cool. I'll just stop it now.